Big news from the NFL today. The league announced it's moving 3 upcoming games because of COVID-19 outbreaks. The Raiders were supposed to take on the Cleveland Browns in Las Vegas Saturday, but that game got moved to Monday after a lot of Browns players tested positive for COVID. The Seahawks versus the LA Rams got moved from Sunday to Tuesday because of an outbreak among the Rams. And the Washington football team also had several players test positive. Their game against the Philadelphia Eagles will also be played on Tuesday instead of Sunday. The NHL also postponing games as well. That's all because of COVID-19. The Colorado Avalanche, Florida Panthers, and Calgary Flames will not be able to play until after December 25th. And the Warriors' Jordan Poole has been placed in the NBA's health and safety protocols. He's the first player on the team to be put there. He's not playing as the Warriors take on the Boston Celtics in a game that's being played right now. Also, 3 Celtics players were put into health and safety protocols. The NBA has seen an increase in players testing positive. The league, though, has agreed to increase testing for 2 weeks, starting just after Christmas on December 26th. For more on all of what we're seeing play out here in professional sports, we're joined now by Dr. Sean Fletcher, sports and public relations professor at San Jose State University. Always appreciate your time. So across all of these different sports, we're seeing more players testing positive for COVID, games that are being shifted around. The question, I guess, is this just the reality of playing pro sports during a pandemic, or do you think these leagues are not doing enough to try to curb the spread of COVID-19?
Well, it has a similar feeling as around March and April of 2020, in that the leagues are somewhat scrambling to try and figure out what their measures are going to be and how closely they're going to stick with them. I do believe that this is the new normal, especially with leagues like the NFL, who are now moving into the meat, the prime sort of time of their season, to where they're no longer competing with college football. And as we saw with the games that were supposed to be played tomorrow, they ended up postponing them until Monday in order to allow for many of their players potentially to field a competitive roster. So I think that teams and organizations and front offices are absolutely going to have to adjust.
The NFL, as you point out, I mean, they're going to great lengths to shift all of these games around, make sure that the teams are still able to compete. But do you think at some point it's time to start thinking about potentially putting the NFL season on hold, or maybe some of these other seasons as well, putting a pause on things?
While conventional wisdom would say that that should be a serious consideration, I don't think that it is. I think we all know, and I've been one to hold the NFL and other major leagues to task in terms of how they've handled many of these issues, including COVID protocol. But I think it would be somewhat naive of me to even think that the NFL is going to take such lengths as to delay their season even by a week. I think what we've seen, even from the standpoint of the NFL Players Association and league really feverishly working to amend many of the COVID protocols that they worked so hard to put in place earlier in the offseason, they're working to accelerate when players can come back after being put into the health and safety protocol. So I think that we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing the NFL take drastic measures to ensure they don't have to delay while allowing their teams to put a competitive product out on the field.
All right, let's talk about the NBA for a moment, because right now we are seeing a number of star players being sidelined because of concerns about COVID-19. Obviously, it's potentially a big blow to a league that's seeing viewership increase this year. They're heading into the heart of the season, some big games coming up, of course, on Christmas Day. How much is at risk here for the NBA?
I think that we've seen primarily with our major sport leagues, especially this time of year, to where they have a captive audience, quite honestly, that they're somewhat playing with house money, if you will. I do not believe that they're going to take much of a hit. This is that time of the year where the viewing audience, from a sports watching standpoint, the NBA is starting to take the baton, if you will, from the NFL. The NFL playoffs are going to start and move through, and then the vast majority of TV watching and revenue and merchandising ultimately after the holiday season passes over to the NBA. So I think while the NBA is going to have to batten down the hatches and they're going to have to take significant steps, and we've seen some interesting stories even coming out today with Kyrie Irving now potentially playing on a part-time basis, the NBA seems to have thought through what their steps are going to be. And I'll be curious to see how this all plays out.
All right, let's talk briefly, if we could, about what this uptick in COVID cases potentially means for the fans. I mean, obviously, you compare things to a couple of years ago when we had empty arenas. Now we have packed arenas here, but you obviously know up in Canada, you're seeing some of the NHL teams, they're already moving to limit the capacity at games. Do you think if things start to look worse here in terms of the spread of this new variant, do we start to see those smaller crowds again at stadiums and arenas in this country?
Well, I think, and as I said sort of at the start of the conversation, where it now has a eerie feeling to around March of 2020, the great differentiator is that we do have vaccines that are available. We do have the overwhelming population in the United States being vaccinated, while we do have Omicron and the Delta variants becoming highly or being seen as highly contagious. We are still seeing to where we are not taking steps back like we did during the sports season last year. So while I could see in severe cases in certain areas where the cities may start to put ordinances in place to shut down and limit gatherings, where that ultimately is going to have a trickle-down effect to their sport leagues, I'd be surprised if we saw widespread shutdown like we did a year ago.
Yeah, it certainly seems like the games will go on no matter what, but with certainly some more safety measures potentially being put in place. Always appreciate your insight, Dr. Sean Fletcher from San Jose State. Take care. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Same to you.